Hi, welcome everyone. I am Shannon Crowley, and I am a registered dietitian here with Mother of Fact, specializing in maternal care. So, Mother of Fact is a telehealth platform for nutrition care from registered dietitians for women from pre-pregnancy fertility issues throughout pregnancy and beyond. We specialize in high risk nutrition intervention and care and work primarily with birthing people from resource restricted areas. If you have any questions or concerns about Mother of Fact, who we are, what we do, I can definitely drop my email address into the chat so you can message me following this webinar. Can everyone just make sure that you have your microphone on mute and you feel free to enter all of your questions into the chat and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. So that said, welcome to our fifth webinar. This is the first session in our 2026 Mother of Fact webinar series. We do have the recordings from sessions 1 through 4 that we did cover in 2025. We cover some different topics like managing nausea and food aversions, eating for energy, gestational diabetes prevention and management, and what to eat to support birth and postpartum recovery. I can also drop that in the chat, the link to those recordings. They are found on our YouTube channel. So our topic today is Before the Bump, Building Pre-Pregnancy Nutrition Habits that Support a Healthy Pregnancy. So before we go ahead and get started, I want to introduce our presenter, one of the dietitians on our team, Erin. So Erin is a registered dietitian whose life and work has taken her around the world, from the United Kingdom and South Korea to the South Pacific. She loves learning about how different cultures approach food and health, especially when it comes to nourishing mothers, babies, and mothers-to-be. Erin joined the Mother of Fact team at the end of 2025 and is thrilled to be kicking off a new season of webinars with today's presentation. So please welcome Erin.
Thank you, Shannon. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. It's nice to see some faces. Camille, thank you for having your video on. If anybody else would like to have their video on, it's really nice to see faces. No pressure, of course. Okay, I am going to be ready to share my screen. Am I okay to do that, Shannon?
Yep, go right ahead.
Okay. Oh, I see the button. All righty. So thanks for that lovely introduction, Shannon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Like Shannon said, my name is Erin. I'm one of the Mother of Fact dietitians, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is preconception, pre-pregnancy nutrition. If we plan ahead for pregnancy, it can give us and our future babies a head start on health. And even if we find ourselves pregnant without being able to plan ahead of time, there's still a lot that we can do in those early days to support excellent outcomes. So without further ado, welcome to Before the Bump, Building Pre-Pregnancy Nutrition Habits that Support a Healthy Pregnancy. In today's presentation, we'll start off with discussing why our nutrition choices matter before pregnancy and not just during. There's an important window of time before conception and in very early pregnancy when our nutrition choices have an outsized impact, like a really big impact. And that's called the critical window of opportunity. So we'll be talking about how to take advantage of that time and why that time matters. And we'll then transition to reviewing some of the most important nutrients for pregnancy. So iron, folate, and choline. These nutrients are essential for maternal health and fetal development and can come from a variety of food sources as well as from any prenatal supplements you may be taking. The next important element we'll cover is blood sugar balance. Maintaining stable blood sugar instead of having those exaggerated highs and lows is key for fertility and for healthy hormones. It supports conception and it protects early pregnancy outcomes. And in all of this, we want to make sure we build habits we can keep up in our real lives and for the foreseeable future. So today we'll sketch out some ideas for practical and realistic nutrition habits that can fit into busy routines without falling into the trap of perfection. And on that note, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. There are so many positive changes we can make to impact our health and our future pregnancy outcomes. So we'll talk about some factors that make a difference now and what you can leave until later or kind of ignore altogether. So let's get started with why pre-pregnancy nutrition matters. So we know that our body situation, our state of health before we enter the phase of pregnancy will necessarily affect how we feel during pregnancy. But of course, it also impacts our future health outcomes and the health of our future baby. So for example, we hear about the neural tube closure or neural tube development. Fetal neural tube development begins almost immediately. So the neural tube is the structure that will eventually become the baby's brain and spinal cord. And this closes or finishes the basic structure by about week 6 of pregnancy, which is before many people even know they're pregnant. So making sure we've been getting plenty of good nutrition ensures this begins and goes well from the start. Focusing on pre-pregnancy nutrition also means we start storing up nutrients for our body to use after becoming pregnant well before we become pregnant. We can think of this like our car's gas tank. So if we've got a big trip coming up, we want to make sure the tank is full. And it's the same with before conception. We want to fill up the gas tank by eating nutrient-dense meals and taking prenatal supplements so that with a full tank, when pregnancy occurs, our bodies can start using those nutrient stores for that early fetal development, which, as we mentioned, starts from the very beginning. So starting a pregnancy already fully stocked with the nutrients needed supports our health, supports maternal health, as well as that of the growing baby. And plus, it helps us get through times when our nutrition isn't as dialed in as we want it to be. For example, if we're experiencing morning sickness or a lot of nausea or food aversions, we don't have to worry so much about trying to get in all the nutrients we need because we've laid a really solid foundation before. And finally, pre-pregnancy nutrition supports fertility, which is our very ability to become pregnant. By maintaining balanced blood sugar, taking in adequate protein, and topping up our stores of micronutrients, we're supporting healthy hormone production and boosting egg quality to prepare for future conception. So now let's get down to the nutrition nitty-gritty. There are so many nutrients out there that do amazing things in our bodies, but we're going to narrow our focus today on the ones that are going to make the biggest impact on pregnancy, and those are iron, folate, and choline. So starting out with iron, this nutrient is essential for creating the red blood cells that carry oxygen in our blood, which circulates all throughout our body, and in pregnancy carries oxygen to our developing baby. During pregnancy, the amount of blood in our body increases significantly, so we need more red blood cells to carry more oxygen through more blood. And because of that, we need more iron. So iron matters before pregnancy for several reasons, because it supports healthy ovulation. It fills up that nutrient gas tank that our bodies will draw from during pregnancy. It prevents the development of anemia or iron deficiency, not having enough iron, which can complicate conception and cause problems in pregnancy. And because iron stores take time to fill back up again once they're depleted. You can see here on the screen the recommended daily amount of iron each day for non-pregnant menstruating individuals is 18 milligrams per day, and then during pregnancy that increases to 27 milligrams per day. So a sample day of eating that would include approximately those amounts could be having a spinach omelet for breakfast, some bean soup for lunch, and spaghetti with a meat sauce made with ground beef for your evening meal. Now keep in mind there are two types of iron, heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron, that's Heme, you'll see that over there on the right, is found in animal sources, including animal muscle and organ meats, seafood, and eggs, while non-heme iron is the plant source of iron, found in foods like beans, legumes, tofu, and some fortified grains and cereals, dark leafy greens. It is harder for our body to absorb and use non-heme iron, so people who follow plant-based diets like vegans and vegetarians will likely need to increase how much of those foods they're taking in. One tip for maximizing our body's ability to absorb iron from food is to pair sources of iron with sources of vitamin C. The vitamin C works in the body to improve how well that iron that we take in from food is absorbed and utilized. And no matter what source it comes from, this works. So it's especially a good idea to pair any plant-based sources of iron with a source of vitamin C to make sure we get as much of that plant-based iron, that non-heme iron, as possible out of the food. And the same thing works for an iron supplement. If your healthcare provider has recommended you take supplementary iron, they may have told you to take it with a glass of orange juice. And that's because that vitamin C will help increase your body's absorption of that iron supplement. Another tip for iron absorption is to avoid iron blocking or iron binding foods when you're eating an iron-rich meal or taking a supplement. So make sure to separate your iron from anything like coffee, tea, dairy products, or calcium supplements that you're taking at the same time that will work against the goal of absorbing the iron. Oops. Now, this is a nutrient that gets the most airtime when it comes to pregnancy, folate. So folate is also called vitamin B9. It is essential for fetal neural tube development. And it also supports healthy cell division and DNA synthesis and assists with red blood cell formation for both mother and baby. So we've already talked about how the fetal neural tube closes by week 6 of pregnancy. Making sure that we have strong nutrient stores of all nutrients, but specifically folate before pregnancy and in early pregnancy supports that process. And in fact, research has shown that adequate folate intake and adequate folate supplementation reduces the risk of neural tube defects in infants by 70%. So it's very impactful. In pre-pregnancy and in early pregnancy, it's recommended to get anywhere from 400 to 800 micrograms per day. And that's because, there's a range of needs depending on people's history and their health situations. So go ahead and talk to your healthcare provider about your individual needs as far as how much is recommended for you before pregnancy and during pregnancy. And also make sure you're taking the right form of folate for you. Again, some people may need specific forms of folate to be able to absorb and utilize those. So speak to your healthcare provider about that. Our best recommendation is to start taking a prenatal supplement that contains folate at least 1 to 3 months before trying to conceive to build those nutrient stores and reduce risk for birth defects. But again, if you're already pregnant or you find yourself unexpectedly pregnant without being able to take a prenatal for several months, no problem. Go ahead and start taking your prenatal right away. But in addition to a prenatal supplement, we can also get folate from food. The top sources include dark leafy greens like spinach, kale, and collards, legumes like lentils, beans, or chickpeas, citrus and other produce like avocados, asparagus, and broccoli, and fortified grains and cereals. And next up, we have choline. Choline may not be as well known as folate, but it plays a similar and equally important role in fetal development. Studies have shown that maternal choline intake is connected with the development of the fetal hippocampus, which is a section in the brain that's in charge of memory and memory formation. Which means that making sure we have enough choline in our bodies before pregnancy and early pregnancy can help our baby's brain develop and can impact learning outcomes for the rest of their life. For this reason, and because most people don't get enough choline, we highly recommend paying attention to this nutrient. We've listed the recommended daily intake for choline during different phases of life here on the slide. Note how the amount increases as demand for choline increases across pregnancy and breastfeeding. Many prenatal vitamins or supplements contain little, if any, choline. In recent years, more of the supplement companies have started including choline as the research has become more apparent about how important it is. But if you are taking a prenatal vitamin or you're shopping for one, please do take a look at the supplement facts on the label and see if yours includes choline. And if it does, see how close you are to the recommended daily intake. Thankfully, though, there are several choline-rich sources of food we can focus on. So eggs are one of the most accessible sources, and enjoying 2 eggs a day will get you halfway to your daily choline goals for pre-pregnancy. Other food sources include liver, like beef or chicken livers, chicken and fish, some dairy, soybeans, cruciferous vegetables, and sunflower lecithin. So those were our top 3 nutrients for pregnancy, but of course, our nutrition recommendations don't stop there. If you've got the bandwidth to look into some other specific nutrients, we would recommend taking a look at these. So vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B12, calcium, iodine, and zinc and selenium. We'll just do a quick review of these. Vitamin D supports our bone health and immune function, but it also plays a vital role in fertility. We can improve our vitamin D status through safe sun exposure because our skin cells have a way of producing or manufacturing vitamin D from sunlight. Or we can also get dietary sources like fatty fish, fortified dairy products, and we can also take vitamin D3 supplements. You may be seeing recommendations for taking supplemental DHA. The big long name is docosahexaenoic acid during pregnancy, but that's referring to a special kind of fat called omega-3s. So these support the development of the fetal brain and eyes, and it also helps protect our bodies from the negative effect of inflammation. Oily fish like sardines, mackerel, and salmon are some of the best sources of omega-3s, but there are algae-based supplements that can be a suitable vegetarian or vegan option if that's necessary. Vitamin B12 works with folate to support neural tube formation and brain development as well. Animal products are the major source of vitamin B12, so anyone following an exclusively plant-based diet should work with a healthcare provider to check for deficiency and supplement appropriately of vitamin B12. Moving back to calcium, we've all probably had it drilled into our heads that calcium is good for our bones, and this is true for a growing and developing baby as well. Getting enough calcium protects our bones, protects our skeleton while we are growing a new baby. So dairy products, of course, are a great source of calcium, as are fortified plant milks, leafy greens, tofu, bone-in seafood like sardines, sesame seeds, and even molasses are all good sources of calcium. And iodine may be one that's a little less common to hear bandied about in pregnancy conversations, but it's incredibly important. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, quote, iodine deficiency remains the leading cause of preventable intellectual disability worldwide. In addition to impacting brain development, iodine also plays an important role in thyroid health for both the mother and the baby. So it's no wonder we recommend taking a closer look at this nutrient. Food sources include iodized salt, dairy products, seaweed, some seafood, and eggs, and many prenatal supplements are starting to include iodine in their formations as well. And then finally, both zinc and selenium play a role in maternal immune function, in fetal cell division, which drives the growth and development of our baby, and antioxidant support. So find zinc in meats, seafood, nuts and seeds, and whole grains. And for a good source of selenium, Brazil nuts are great. So moving on to our next section, let's dive into how blood sugar balance supports fertility and early pregnancy. Our blood sugar levels, whether they're too high, too low, or nicely balanced in between, touch nearly every step in the conception and pregnancy process. And it all has to do with hormones. Poorly regulated insulin, which is a hormone responsible for dealing with the glucose or the sugar that's in our bloodstream after eating, can have an effect on other hormones that can disrupt ovulation and impair fertility. This can also cause inflammation, stressing our system and further impacting fertility. But with more stable blood sugar levels, inflammation is reduced, hormones are balanced, and we have more energy for our cells, ensuring we'll be prepared to meet the demands of ovulation, implantation, and early pregnancy. Now, keep in mind that blood sugar levels are always fluctuating based on factors like what we eat, when we eat, what we eat with what we're eating, our sleep quality, our stress levels, and even where we're at in the menstrual cycle. So there are a lot of factors influencing how our body is expressing insulin and managing blood sugar. The goal isn't ever to achieve one perfect number or some very strict control, but rather to implement healthy habits that support blood sugar stability on a big picture basis. If we have better blood sugar control over time, even with gradual shifts day by day, that really does make a big difference on our fertility. So, how do we do that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. There are a few cardinal rules for eating for balanced blood sugar, and these can be adapted to all diets, all cultural traditions, and all food preferences. First up, we want to start with the power trio. Protein, fat, and fiber should have a place at every meal and snack. Together, taken together in a meal or snack, they slow digestion for a slower release of glucose in the blood, which then slows the rise in blood sugar and prevents those big spikes and crashes that can cause problems. So we can think of, something with fiber and fat and protein. We eat it, we start to digest it. It takes a nice long time to digest, and our blood sugar has a gradual increase like this. Whereas if we, drink a big cup of soda or something really sugary that doesn't have protein, fat, and fiber, our blood sugar levels will have a significant spike and then a significant crash. So we really want to just kind of even out the curve. Another great thing about this power trio is that it keeps us feeling full and satisfied for longer after meals, meaning we're less likely to keep grazing after our intentional meals and snacks. So next, we want to prioritize complex carbohydrates. Complex carbs have more fiber and usually have more nutrients, in fact. And we know that more fiber, of course, means slower digestion and a slower rise in blood sugar. We also want to make sure we eat regularly whenever possible. Going too long in between meals can cause a big drop in our blood sugar, which leaves us feeling shaky and weak and usually ready to eat everything in sight. So instead, if you're able, try to eat every 3 to 4 hours to give yourself regular energy with time to digest in between. And finally, remember that carbs aren't the enemy, but too many and the wrong kinds can have negative effects. So experiment with different complex carbohydrate sources paired with protein, fat, and fiber for the best results. So before pregnancy is actually a great time to implement healthy habits. The best ones fit into our lives and are things we can keep up for a long time. So how to do that? Well, I'd say let's start with small changes and build from there. Identify one or two easy changes, and by that, one or two easy wins that won't take very much effort. An example would be maybe we could swap soda for sparkling water without that causing too much stress, or change out white bread for a whole grain option instead. Something that doesn't have a lot of friction, doesn't require you to change the way you do things. You just maybe swap out a different version of that food for one that's a little bit healthier. Making and keeping these changes for a few days or weeks until they're cemented will give us confidence and help us feel really good about our ability to make change. And from there, we can move on to a couple more. Another way to do this is to make healthy, nutrient-dense foods the easiest choice. If we have time to prepare healthy snacks ahead of time, we'll be less likely to reach for something that doesn't support our goals when hunger hits. And a little bit of food prep can go a long way here. So hard boiling some eggs, pre-chopping some fruit or some veggies for snacks or meals. Anything we can do ahead makes making a smarter choice in the moment that much easier. And remember to use the power trio, protein, fat, and fiber. This helps us build a balanced meal by filling half our plate with non-starchy veggies and then splitting the remaining half of the plate between protein and complex carbohydrates. And this gives us a filling meal that helps balance blood sugar and gives us all the nutrients we need. And finally, this is the hardest one, try and practice flexibility. And, give ourselves grace. We hear a lot about falling off the wagon when it comes to making diet changes or healthy lifestyle shifts. But the reality is, there is no wagon. It's just choices, one right after another. So if there's a choice that doesn't go your way, the only thing left to do is make a better choice at the next opportunity. And one, occasional blip here or there won't derail our fertility goals, especially if we make the next choice the one that's best for us. So, with that in mind, here are some high impact habits worth building early in a fertility or pregnancy journey. So, starting with taking a prenatal supplement daily. Make sure to read the label and see if yours includes folate, choline, and iron if necessary. Ideally, we'll start taking this a few months before trying to conceive, like we mentioned earlier, but it's never too late to start supplementing with these valuable nutrients, no matter where you are in your journey. Next, include sources of folate in your diet every day. This could be dark leafy greens, legumes, citrus fruits, fortified grains, and cereals. These are broad categories that can fit into every food tradition and taste preference. Next, prioritize sources of choline daily. So if you're not into liver, eggs are a great way to do this. Or you can also make sure your prenatal supplement contains choline as well. And keep practicing building balanced plates with protein, healthy fats, fiber, and complex carbohydrates for optimal blood sugar balance. And we know there is a lot of noise in the pregnancy and fertility space. It's easy to feel like we need to be doing all the things, and it's very easy to start feeling overwhelmed. But here's some stuff that you don't really need to stress about. First is perfect eating. It doesn't exist. It's better to find a healthy eating pattern that's sustainable for your real life. And on that note, extreme dietary restrictions aren't necessary for most people. However, if you do feel like you would benefit from cutting out certain food groups or for trying something like an elimination diet or an allergy friendly diet, definitely talk to your healthcare provider for support with that. Complicated meal plans aren't necessary either. Sometimes the simplest meals are the most balanced and nutritious. And expensive supplements should be looked at critically. Talk to your healthcare provider if you think you need something specialized, like a specialized form of folate, for example. Otherwise, a quality prenatal supplement and a healthy food choices should provide ample nutrients to nourish your future pregnancy. Tracking macros or moment by moment blood sugar levels isn't really necessary for most of us. If you feel that's important for you or something that could help you, definitely work with a professional. But if you feel stressed by it, and if all the tracking feels a bit obsessive and kind of makes you anxious, then you can swap that out for an eating pattern or an eating template like this balanced plate method or the power trio that we've talked about. Those are great because they adapt to real life situations and they might feel a little more gentle. And remember, the goal is progress, not perfection. Small, consistent changes matter more than dramatic overhauls that are hard to keep up for long. So, with those tips in mind, here is a sample daily eating pattern, something that would be fertility friendly and pregnancy supporting and could, work with a variety of food preferences and hunger levels. We will be sending out a recording to everybody who signed up for this webinar later. So you'll have access to this slide if you want to use it to build your own meal plans. So you can see that breakfast has us starting out strong with a spinach and egg scramble, which is rich in folate and choline. And next we've got a mid-morning snack. So if you need a mid-morning snack, something like plain Greek yogurt with berries and a handful of chopped almonds provides a balanced and satisfying mini meal that has protein, calcium, healthy fats, and antioxidants. Lunch could be a lentil soup with a side salad that combines mixed greens and complex carbohydrates. And again, this is loads of folate, iron, fiber, and complex carbs and healthy fat. If you need an afternoon snack, you could try an apple with some almond butter or peanut butter on the side. And this pairs fiber, fat, and protein together for that power trio. For dinner, round things out with grilled fish for protein, omega-3s, and choline, some roasted sweet potato for beta carotene, which is a form of vitamin A, fiber and complex carbohydrates, and then add some steamed broccoli with butter for some folate and a little non-heme iron. And then if you need an evening snack, a small bowl of fortified cereal with milk provides extra iron, folate, and calcium, or a small piece of dark chocolate provides satisfaction and probably a little bit of joy if you're like me. So we wanted to review some guidelines for choosing a prenatal vitamin, prenatal supplement. The purpose of a prenatal supplement is to fill in the gaps that our diet doesn't quite cover. So it's not meant to be everything you need all the time, but it is good to make sure that it's got the basics that we most often need a little bit of help with. So not all prenatal supplements are created equally. Keep these details in mind when you're shopping for yours. First, please do check that the prenatal supplement you're buying contains folate or methylfolate, iodine, vitamin D, and vitamin B12, and calcium. Some prenatal supplements don't contain iron on purpose because it can cause digestive upset for some people. So work with your healthcare provider to determine if you need a prenatal with iron, if you need to separate your iron supplement from your prenatal and supplement separately, if you don't need it, that sort of thing. They'll likely run some blood work to see what your iron status is, and you can make your decision after that. Next, think about the form your prenatal comes in, whether it's pills or gummies, and what you'll realistically want to take. Some prenatal supplement companies are coming out with prenatal powders that can be mixed into smoothies or drinks. So look into that if you aren't a fan of pills or gummies, or if standard prenatals upset your stomach. Now, unfortunately, not all supplements are regulated in the United States, so look for companies that use third-party testing to ensure ingredient safety and purity. Usually they'll advertise this clearly on the label, and you can look for the letters USP or NSF or a consumer lab certification for the best options. And like we said before, if you can, go ahead and start taking a prenatal supplement before you start trying to conceive. And if you're already pregnant, congratulations, start taking your prenatal supplement immediately. Plan to continue taking your prenatal through your entire pregnancy and while you're breastfeeding as well. Even if you don't plan to breastfeed or if you aren't able to breastfeed, it's still a good idea to start taking, or excuse me, to keep taking your prenatal supplement for a few months after giving birth to support your recovery and top up your body's nutritional gas tank, like we talked about. To again, just support your overall health and also to ensure that your body is ready for a future pregnancy if you decide to do that. So there's a lot of information that we've covered today, and it's all helpful for general fertility and general pregnancy, but we've highlighted a few areas where your individual needs will need some specific help. So if you have some pre-existing conditions like the ones listed on the screen, I also wanted to say to highlight that if someone follows a specialized diet, or if you've had a history of surgery on your digestive organs, so stomach or the intestines, or if you've used GLP-1 medications, those would also be times when it would be really great to work with a healthcare provider. With specialized diets, with intestinal or abdominal digestive organ surgery, and with GLP-1s, it's very common for people to accidentally develop deficiencies. So that'd be a great place to get some extra guidance. So to review what we've discussed today, if we can plan ahead and start filling up our nutrition gas tank before pregnancy, that is ideal. We know there's a lot of things that begin happening in pregnancy from the very beginning. So if we can make sure our system is replete with nutrients, we'll be starting off on the right foot. We want to remember that blood sugar balance supports fertility, and we can practice this every day when we put together balanced meals and snacks. And it's good for our mental and emotional well-being to let go of the pursuit of perfection wherever it's possible. There is no perfect way to prepare for pregnancy, but we want to celebrate progress over perfection and give ourselves grace as we continue to learn and grow. And then finally, focus on the three key nutrients we identified today. Iron, folate, and choline are the big players, and getting enough of these will set us up for success in this pre-pregnancy phase. And then prioritize those sustainable habits that work for real life. It's very exciting to think about starting a big program or a detox overhaul, but remember to think critically about how am I going to implement this in my day to day? Am I going to be able to keep this up long term? Even if habit changes feel small, they really do add up over time. So that concludes my presentation for today. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I think I maybe ran a few minutes over, but Shannon and I are going to be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So what are your questions?
Yeah, great presentation, Erin. Thank you so much for reviewing everything and giving great examples. Definitely a great run through and a great resource for those who are, hoping to prepare their bodies for conception. I can definitely get us started with the question as feel free to put some questions into the chat and we'll review a few before we wrap up. But one that I was thinking about was, maybe you can talk a little bit about starting to make some changes. Like I know you had mentioned with blood sugar stability, trying to make sure that you're eating every few hours, these balanced meals. What if someone doesn't typically eat breakfast? Maybe they're in a rush, off to class, off to school, off to work. What would you recommend for someone to kind of start, making a change to kind of get, some food into their system in the morning? That's not overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a very common question as well. Yeah, a lot of people wake up and then just hit the ground running. Or a lot of people wake up and they aren't hungry. I would say it's great to eat breakfast. I mean, I would not recommend skipping breakfast chronically, especially if someone is skipping breakfast and just having coffee. So I would recommend please do eat breakfast. And if you're having a hard time doing that, either because you're rushed or because you're not hungry, make it very easy for yourself to grab and go and make it very easy for yourself to consume. So, for example, if I wake up in the morning and I'm not hungry, but I know I need to eat, it's going to be really hard for me to want to sit down and eat a plate of eggs and sausages and toast and fresh fruit. Like, that's just a lot of volume. It's a lot of chewing. That's maybe some savory foods that I don't really feel all that excited about first thing in the morning. So I would instead recommend something like a smoothie that's got a source of protein, a source of healthy fats, and a source of fiber in it. And it's a little bit sweet and a little bit cool, and it's easy to drink. That sort of thing, there's a low barrier to entry from a taste perspective, from a digestive perspective. Um, and it's also just kind of less work to physically eat. Additionally, if you are in a rush and you're heading to work or school, it's something that you can make either ahead of time or make in the morning and take with you. And then that way you aren't changing your morning routine so much. So those would be my recommendations. What do you think, Shannon?
No, I love that. I think definitely something grab and go can take on your commute with you, and that way you can kind of, sip on it and take it. It's not like you have to, rush to try to finish it, a hot meal that you rush to make before you're heading out the door. So I love that idea. Also having, grab and go things on hand, like you had mentioned
Mm,
before, prepping things ahead of time, like hard-boiled eggs or granola bars, yogurt. So, kind of quick things that don't take a lot of prep to kind of ease into getting something in that morning. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. Another question that, I think can come to mind with people that are making different lifestyle and diet choices is kind of, the circle that surrounds them, different peers and, trying to get others maybe on board with the changes they're making. Like maybe if someone is, whenever they go out to eat, they love getting a soda. So maybe if they're making some different choices, maybe they're trying to swap out that soda for a seltzer water. Maybe they might have some feedback from the people that they're with, kind of giving them some pushback, like, what? Why aren't you getting sodas with us? So, any kind of tips or advice, I guess, for someone that maybe just try to communicate with the people that they're around,
yeah.
if they're trying to make choices for themselves?
Yeah, no, that's a great situation to highlight. because even though the choices that we're making for our diet and for our lifestyle are about us and only us, somehow people still think it's appropriate to comment on them. So if you're in a situation like that, or you have people in your life around that, I have some sympathy for that, and I'm sorry that's happening. Just know that it isn't any of their business, and you don't have to give them a reason. But if you'd like to respond to somebody's request that you join them for ice cream, and you're trying not to have ice cream, or if someone has a critical comment about the choices that you're making, if you feel comfortable, you can just be really honest, like, hey, I'm thinking about my future fertility. I'm thinking about my long-term health, and I'm trying really hard to make little changes to improve that along the way. And right now, something that feels doable for me is to swap out soda for seltzer. And so that's what I'm doing. It's no comment on anything you're doing. I'm just doing this for me. I think the real crux of that sort of situation, that hypothetical that you identified, Shannon, is that people see changes that we make in our lives, especially healthy, beneficial changes, as judgment upon their choices. And that's not true, but I think people can often get defensive and feel like our choices are a reflection of theirs. So that's a whole other topic. But anyway, I think anyone would be justified in saying, like, I'm just working on some healthy changes and this is what's working for me right now.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Especially because this kind of topic can be more personal. Maybe, you don't want to broadcast the reason, behind, and you don't have to share that if you don't want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
I'm trying to conceive and that's why I'm not having soda. Yeah, we don't have to say that. You can, that'd be great, but
yeah,
you
depends
certainly
on the
don't have to
person.
share if you don't want to.
Yeah, definitely. I love your take on that. I think definitely, definitely making it, more known that people can just, make their choices and not have to kind of, cause any kind of explanation. So thank you. Thank you for that.
One little tagline I like to say, and I have to be careful about who I say this to, but eyes on your own plate. Like that refers to us. Like we're going to focus on ourselves and not judge other people for the choices that they're making in their food and in their life. But that applies to other people too. Keep your eyes on your own plate. I'll keep my eyes on my own plate.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if you do feel, you want to let your inner circle in, say, hey, I'd really respect your support, on this, up to you, but definitely not needed necessarily. So I love that. Well, maybe we'll just have time for one more question. If anyone has anything else they want to talk about, please put it in the chat. But just different things you had talked about today, kind of mapping out different healthier options, some meal snack ideas as well. Do you have any resources for maybe someone who's kind of getting into trying to cook more and kind of steer away from opting to purchase food out or grabbing fast food, so just making some choices of just cooking more at home? Any kind of beginner guides or websites they can kind of lean towards and that you have off the top of your head?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just as I was clicking over to the additional resources screen, so good timing. I just wanted to mention this screen just has some additional resources for conception and pre-pregnancy and early pregnancy if someone's looking for more evidence-based and scientific information on the topics we covered today. But as far as trying to cook more at home, I, I think I think getting off the internet is the best thing to start with, and just kind of focusing on one or two resources instead of seeing all the recipes on TikTok, all the reels on Instagram, all the recipes on blogs just on an internet search. I think that can be really overwhelming for somebody who's trying to start. I would recommend going to the library or a bookstore and finding a cookbook, like a real life cookbook that resonates with you. There are some great ones that have a bit more focus on, I don't want to say meal prep, but food prep. So preparing, like we talked about, hard-boiled eggs ahead of time, or, a marinated salad that you can pack for lunches for a couple of days ahead of time. Um, there are some great cookbooks out there that do that, and I don't have any off the top of my head, but I would say that would be my number one recommendation. So get offline, go find or find one resource online that works with your budget, works with your taste preferences, works with the way you like to think about planning meals, and do a little deep dive. Just work on that for a little while. What about you, Shannon? I know you cook a lot at home.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, I love your take on, getting off the internet because there are lots of different trends that do circulate online. So one website I do love is called Eating Well, and I feel like they have lots of good, balanced, kind of simple meal ideas. But I do love the take of going to the library. Definitely a great option, great resource, free. You can go and browse yourself to give yourself some ideas, or you can opt to borrow, the cookbook and bring it home with you. And I do know lots of libraries have lots of great resources. Like I've seen my local library have even like little recipe cards of the week, so you can try out something new and give you some ideas. So I think definitely utilizing resources around you, seeing what you have, and just keeping it nice and simple. So I love that. Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. That concludes our first webinar of 2026. So please keep an eye out for the recording in your email and, hope to see you at the next one. Of
Thank you all. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you for facilitating.
course. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.